Well, you just heard the breaking news now. An extremely rare move. House lawmakers have voted to expel Congressman George Santos from Congress. The New York Republican is the first member of Congress ever removed without being convicted of a crime. He pointed that out the other day, though he does face a number of charges, 23 federal charges. Earlier, we saw Santos get into a car and leave Capitol Hill. We also heard from House Speaker Mike Johnson, who declined to speak about Santos's expulsion. But this move means that the Republicans have one fewer vote in their very thin majority. So Nikole Killion is on Capitol Hill. She's been following all of the drama for us. Nikole, so this was pretty much expected. There were 2 expulsion votes before. They needed a 2/3 majority, and the expectation was that they had enough votes, and they certainly did.
Yeah, they did. But, you know, there was some drama all the way up until this vote because Republicans had a conference meeting this morning where many members came out saying that this could be a close vote. All of the Republican leaders came out in opposition to this expulsion resolution. Speaker Johnson, Majority Leader Steve Scalise, GOP Whip Tom Emmer, and GOP Conference Chair Elise Stefanik. So it looked like it was possible that he could have been saved because those leaders were coming out, even though they said they were not going to whip this vote and they were going to let members vote their conscience. And apparently they did because, again, the congressman, no longer a congressman, was expelled in pretty short order and pretty decisively with well over 300 votes, which is a sizable change from what we saw with the last expulsion vote just a month ago, which failed with only 179 lawmakers supporting this. Again, this time, now that threshold was well over 300. Of course, a threshold much higher for expulsion because it requires that 2/3 majority vote. And now Santos has officially left the chamber and will now have to move on to life as a former expelled congressman.
So that's what we expect Santos to be up to. But what happens now in the House? What happens to that vacant seat, Nikole?
Well, exactly that. I mean, the office will be vacant. The House clerk will take over managing that office, although Santos's staffers are welcome to stay on board and continue working in their capacity serving the 3rd Congressional District of New York. But for the time being, it will only be there to kind of provide constituent services. Obviously, it can engage in any kind of legislative activity, and a special election ultimately will have to be held. So the clerk's office will notify the governor of New York, who will then have to call for a special election. We already know that a number of both Democrats and Republicans are already running for this seat in 2024. So it'll be interesting to see if any of them decide to jump in, for instance, to the special election when and if it is called. But for the meantime, there is no representative for the 3rd Congressional District of New York.
Let me ask you, Nikole, you know, he did a press briefing yesterday where he basically suggested he had receipts on other lawmakers that he was going to divulge. Did he give any indication just what he was talking about, or is just kind of a lot of bluster?
Well, you know, he did introduce an expulsion resolution on the floor yesterday afternoon against Congressman Jamal Bowman, who pleaded guilty to pulling the fire alarm a couple of months back during a vote over government funding, which shut down a House office building at the time. But Bowman dismissed that as a meaningless stunt. But, you know, Santos really was arguing that he believed that there should be some due process, that he didn't feel that his colleagues should be the judge, jury, and executioner, in his words. He claims that he did cooperate with the ethics panel, although they said that he never at any point sat down with them, did not provide a statement. You know, Santos, for his part, said some of that was due to scheduling issues, particularly around some of his court appearances. But look, this was a very tumultuous tenure for the Long Island congressman. Of course, he came into this Congress under the specter of, you know, issuing a number of lies about his background, embellishing his resume. Then, of course, he was indicted earlier this spring on 13 federal counts. 10 more were added this fall. These charges range from money laundering to wire fraud, lying to the Federal Election Commission. Santos telling me after that second round of charges that he didn't even know anything about the Federal Election Commission. And then you have this scathing ethics report, which dropped just a couple of weeks ago, which found substantial evidence of potential wrongdoing, alleging that Santos deceived his donors, stole blatantly from his campaign, used some of that money for his own personal expenses on things like Botox and, designer goods. And when we asked the congressman this week to defend some of those allegations, he said he would do that at a later time. But many members argue that there was enough evidence in that report for them to support expulsion, which could potentially be one of the reasons why this vote was so overwhelming today.
Right, Nikole, thank you very much. We want to take everyone over to the steps just outside. Congressman Jamie Raskin is speaking right now. Let's dip in.
His leadership, if they can take on George Santos, they should be able to take on Donald Trump.
We've heard a lot that this sets a dangerous precedent. What would you tell your Republican colleagues who say that this sets a dangerous precedent?
Well, I was the one who argued that it set a dangerous precedent when they tried to expel him a month ago, because there was neither a criminal conviction nor any conclusion of Congress's own ethics process. Now we have a conclusion in the ethics process and a series of findings that George Santos had stolen people's money, used it for vacations to go to Las Vegas, used it for Botox, used it for personal purposes. Now, where did he get the idea that you can lie to the public about significant things and cheat and steal? Got it from Donald Trump, who's the leader of their party. So I just want to know if they're going to use the George Santos test for Donald Trump.
Congressman, on the precedent question, do you think we're actually going to now see more common expulsions, or is Santos just an extraordinary case here?
Well, I believe if you could divine any common law principles emerging from this sequence of motions against him, it's that the House will not vote to expel somebody without a criminal conviction or without an ethics process conclusion that a person engaged in serious misconduct against the public interest and against the law. And that's certainly why I voted the way that I did. I hope that the Republicans who decided that George Santos was no longer a convenient member of their caucus will use the same standards against Donald Trump, who's already been found guilty of fraud, civil fraud in New York, and has already been found guilty of sexually assaulting a woman and then defaming her. That's not even to get into the 4 existing federal and state prosecutions with 91 different felony counts that he's facing all over the country. Can you get any of those Republicans who just voted to expel George Santos to say that they will oppose Donald Trump and try to block his return to office?
Do you think Republicans will be able to hold on to that seat in New York?
I have no idea about the politics of it. I hope Republicans are not able to hang on to any seat if they continue to stand by Donald Trump, who is a threat to the continued vitality of the Republic.
Congressman, how do you vote on this expulsion? Republicans are still trying to get Hunter Biden to testify behind closed doors, of course, with the impeachment inquiry.
Yes.
So I'm just wondering, well, not the impeachment inquiry, to the investigation. So I'm just wondering, what's your response to them? They commented on your criticism of that, saying that, well, this was also the same standard that other witnesses were held to when they were sought to testify under the January 6th investigation.
Yeah. All right, well, let's start with this. They're like Ahab and the Great White Whale and Moby Dick. They've been chasing Hunter Biden for 10 months, alleging some shadowy, sinister family conspiracy. They have produced no evidence for it, no proof for it. Their own expert witnesses at their first big impeachment hearing rejected the idea that Joe Biden had engaged in any criminal conduct, much less impeachable conduct. And then they went ahead and they subpoenaed Hunter Biden to come in, and Hunter Biden said, yes, I will come in and I will testify before the entire world. I will subject myself to all of your questions. You set up the process as you see fit. Chairman Comer immediately said, no, we don't want that. He said it won't work with the 5-minute format. He's not bound by the 5-minute format. He can set up whatever process he wants. He controls the committee. The majority controls the committee. If they want to have lawyers asking questions, that's been done before. They can have lawyers asking questions. He can do it however he wants. Now, is it different from what happened with Steve Bannon, for example? And you're asking the right guy, because I brought the contempt motion against Steve Bannon to the floor of the House of Representatives. Steve Bannon did not even respond to our subpoena. He was 9 months in violation of our subpoena, and we held him in contempt. And then finally...
All right, Congressman Jamie Raskin there took a pivot from talking about the expulsion of George Santos to the Republican-led impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden and his business dealings with his son Hunter Biden. Let's go back quickly to Nikole Killion for some final thoughts. Nikole, pretty historic day on Capitol Hill.
Absolutely. I mean, this is only the 6th time in U.S. history that this has happened. Initially, the first 3 times were during the Civil War, where you had members fighting for the Confederacy and expelled for that. And then most recently in the 80s and then again in the early 2000s, we saw 2 other members expelled for criminal conduct and convictions. So Santos now makes the 6th, and, does raise a question, as Congressman Raskin was asked there briefly, whether or not this raises a specter for future expulsion votes in the future. There is, even though this vote was successful, still some real concerns about the precedent that this might set going forward. We have already seen, for instance, with censure votes, many of those occurring with more frequency given the hyper-partisanship and dynamics and frustrations here in Congress. So will expulsion be used as a tool more in light of this Santos vote? That is something that remains to be seen, but clearly he was bogged down with a lot of legal troubles from this indictment, from those findings in the ethics report, which again many members felt was enough grounds and due process to remove Santos today.
All right, Nikole Killion for us, doing the incredible work of looking into what is happening there on the Hill and getting reaction from members of Congress. Nikole, you've been a trooper. We appreciate you as always.
You bet.